What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Raven and it's your boy Joe, and we're here with Sergio VanNess today from Oblivion Oddities Gaming. And I've learned something this past week that you cannot trust the counter. I was actually hanging out on Command Post Gaming's live stream. I want to say it was Wednesday night, and there was it was showing him there was no one there. And greetings, Mercurius. Good to have you on. We were actually talking about telemarketers because they called again thankfully before the show. I was just like, geez, can they not leave us alone? But anyway, I want to go ahead and bring this up now because we have got a lot of ground to cover. This is what we're going to show you guys is a game that is currently in the process right now. And this game, I looked at the initial draft, which was like 60 some odd pages, and it was interesting. Like I looked at this, I was like, okay, a D30 system. I've never seen anything use a D30 other than like DCC and MCC, but this one's something else. I think you're in for a real treat today. But I hit the wrong tab. Totally hit the wrong tab just now. Why did I do that? Because I'm a dumbass, obviously. Okay, here we go. We're going to just go ahead and bring that up right here. This thing right here, 26 pages. Again, this is in its very, very early stages, so we're actually getting like first look at this, and I'm going to just keep it up right here, and this is going to be super interesting. We got a lot of ground to cover. Sergio, how the hell are you, man?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing great today. Everything so far is on schedule and no stress.
Nice, very nice. So tell us a bit about you, man. Like, what's your RPG background? What did you do? How did we get to Oblivion Oddities here?
So since I was a little kid, I've known that I've wanted to be an entertainer. I'm one of the few. I consider myself lucky because I actually knew what I wanted to do at a young age, and I was able to just take advantage of my childhood and study and learn about game design. And just throughout the last 20 years, I've just been studying game design and UX design, particularly for the fact of I wanted to know what would make something go from being good to great and from great to iconic. And it's been a long process, a long journey. And I was going to eventually make, when I first started getting into like putting into practice the knowledge I've learned, I was going to try and work with Wizard of the Coast when D&D 5e was coming out. Then I looked into the companies that they are partnered with and some of the things that they've done. I decided against it. I decided that I was going to make my own company and my own game. I didn't quite like the direction that 5e was going anyways, so I knew I had time. I knew I had at least 10 years before the market would open up and there would be a chance for another game to take the spot.
And I remember, like, we talked a bit yesterday, and you did bring this up. I wanted to bring this up too. This was the reason that you opted out of even considering working with Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah.
This is the case versus Darren Reuter, and this was an update. This thread's locked, so we can't do anything else with it. This is from 2005. So they put this guy, what was it, 90 grand in debt and legal fees?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. And this was over copyright, or was it trademark or copyright issues? I think it's trademark issues.
Yeah, it was trademark issues because they had magic in the name of their card game.
Okay, so apparently this was the update. So this is January 2nd of 2005. So I think this is from the update is from January 19th of 2004, Wizards announced on their website the filing of a civil lawsuit against him for unauthorized display of a prototype. And the meaning was clear. At the time, MTG's Salvation's service provider was sent a DMCA notice from Wizards, which was basically an order to remove a handful of discussions from forums or face legal action. Let's see. Okay, so the thing was because he had magic somewhere in there, the word. They went nuts.
Yeah, they didn't want any competition for Magic of the Gathering.
Exactly. So what ended up happening was, he said a lot more has happened in this case, but these are highlights. In describing what's happened so far, I try to draw a distinction between Wizards and their attorneys. I truly believe Wizards are a good group of people who work on this game because they love it. However, the attorneys hired are asking for $90,000 plus whatever legal bills they've racked up and interest on that amount. I'm a psychiatric nurse working part-time supporting a wife and 2 little boys. I can't even afford to pay my own attorney, let alone pay for Wizards' massive law firm. So they filed an answer to the legal term, meaning a reply to the lawsuit on February 13th. The very next day, even though his answer had been sent on time, they filed a motion for a default judgment and proposed an order for judgment to asking the court to grant them $90,000, attorney's fees and costs, interest on those amounts, and an injunction preventing him from discussing Wizards policy or for discussing Wizards not publicly available materials. So, apparently this went on for some time. They ended up settling, but the damage had been done.
The thing is that this clearly could not stand. Like, if it had gone to trial, it would not stand. Because that's the exact same thing that happened with Mojang back in 2012. Do you guys remember that?
No.
Mojang, the guys that did Minecraft, were making their own game called Scrolls, which was a collectible card game type thing in a digital format, and got sued by Bethesda because Bethesda felt that that a game called just Scrolls would cause confusion with the Elder Scrolls.
Oh.
And mind you, Mojang won because, I mean, it's Mojang. They've got Minecraft money, right? But they still ended up changing the name to Caller's Bane, presumably as part of a settlement to avoid further legal trouble. This bothers me because just like you can't copyright mechanics, right? You can't copyright the language. If I say the word scroll, I'm not saying Elder Scroll. If I say the word magic, I'm not talking about Magic the Gathering.
Yeah.
Unless I expressly say I'm talking about Magic the Gathering.
And the fact that companies can just get away with putting people through so much debt is absolutely disgusting. They will destroy somebody's, or at least try to destroy somebody's life in order to not have competition. And it's just, we need something new, and we need a new system. We need a company that's going to take all their money and power and use it to protect people instead of just influencing things the way they want to, or the way single individuals want to.
Which, by the way, is itself anti-capitalist. If you're a theoretical capitalist who's in favor, theoretically, of making all the money everywhere, then you have to accept, as part and parcel of that process, free enterprise and open competition. If you're stopping people from having competing products because you don't think your product can compete, then you're not being a capitalist.
Very true. And on top of that was another point of the discussion we were talking about, was having a company with the ethics involved, albeit voluntarily. And this was something I thought was super interesting just about Oblivion Oddities as a company. And this was an idea I kind of thought of just on my own, and might have shared it around the Basic Experts Gilded server a time or two, which was a company that would be like an umbrella, but everyone would own their own studios within the company, similar to how Image Comics did it in the 90s. My only argument, people will say, well, yeah, but Image Comics lost all those studios, or many of them sold, their IPs to other companies like DC, like Jim Lee, I think sold Wildstorm Productions and all entailed to DC. And I noticed that when I was watching, I think I was watching like one of the Batman animated movies, and Grifter from Wildcats popped up, and I was like, wait, no, that's Wildcats. What the fuck is this? And yeah, when you point that out, my counter is Image Comics it's still there. It's still working. In fact, Skybound Entertainment is one of the studios under that umbrella, and they produce The Walking Dead. That's Robert Kirkman's studio, which I think the comic book, in my opinion, was just better than the TV show. It had an end point and didn't burn out its readers. But but this is something that you mentioned you wanted to do, and I was like, oh, finally, yeah, this would absolutely work.
Yeah, Oblivion Oddities Project Studios is supposed to be the good guy company. Quite literally, the good guy company. Everybody keeps saying and making jokes about good guy companies and like how they don't exist yet, but there's nothing stopping us from actually doing that. There is no rule saying that you can't build a company for positive purposes.
And on top of that, everything right now, you're currently just building the foundations on it. This is not something that's like going as of yet. So I know there are probably going to be people out there that'll be like, "Oh, call me back when it's a multi-million-dollar company." It's like, dude, either get in and be part of the solution, or just be part of the solution, part of the problem, or get the hell out of the way, in my opinion. But one of the things that we did talk about, I hope you don't mind, I'm kind of ordering off the menu a little bit here before we get to the game, because I really wanted to show people, what the company is going to be like, and then the product here. So when we were talking about this, right now you do have a Patreon and a GoFundMe, and those links are in the description down below. Personally, I would like to remind people, Kickstarter was supposed to have a Patreon-like model, and they completely snuggled up to very, very big, massive corporations who were worried that they were going to miss out, and then they took over. So we do have some problems with Kickstarter. There are some people that they promised these massive projects, they got funded, and to the moon and beyond, and never delivered. Some of them delivered some subpar products. I've seen that. I've seen those horror stories. Never been privy to it myself. As a matter of fact, I got to mark my Dystopian Dawn 2526 as delivered, which, if you haven't checked out that game, people definitely do. It's awesome. But with Patreon and GoFundMe, this is an opportunity for people to kind of get in, just collectively as a group of people who love and want, companies like this to start. And I think I'll let you take it from there, because I think you can do a better job of it than I could.
So what the end goal is we want to have community studios. We want to have a setup to where it's similar to Unreal Engine, how you can use their engine for free to make a for-profit game, but it comes with the cost of you have to give like 5% royalty for everything you make on that game. And I want to take that and I want to take it to the next level and make an entire community studio that's about the size of a college, where people can just go and after they make a free account with us, they'll be able to rent rooms, rent equipment, film on the campus area, and be able to find other people that are doing things that they need that don't have projects or that need projects to work on. And if we have these studios, let's say I have one in each state, then you would be able to essentially go almost anywhere and possibly be able to work that day and make some money that day, even if you're on vacation.
That went to your future aspirations in gaming. So this is why the Patreon exists. It's why the GoFundMe exists. And I think you said right now, I saw the different tiers and I was like, man, some of these are angel investor level. But you said when we talked yesterday, you really didn't want any, you realize times are tough. And you were like, $1 per person works best.
Yes, I don't want to encourage anybody to give any more than just $1, because I know how hard things are for everybody around. And even if you're making $1 million a year right now, you're still struggling. And that's extreme to have $1 million a year coming in revenue and you still be struggling.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, there are people right now with mortgages and car payments and who knows what else. I mean, $1 million. $1 million is not what it used to be at all.
No, it's not.
It's been diminished in the last like 3 or 4 years now. It would probably be about the equivalent of making like, I don't know, what, 50 grand a year, if that.
Something like that, yeah.
Just for inflation.
What a horrifying statement of just how low my quality of living is. Thank you.
So since everybody's struggling, I don't want to rip into people's pockets. If I could just get people to donate $1 or $1 a month, it would be something that they could easily afford while not having to sacrifice any necessity in their life.
For just $1 a day, you too can feed a small, desperate game developer living in South Africa.
Meanwhile, that one Dutch person's like, what is he talking about?
Ubuntu lives in a small village without an internet connection.
No, he's
but for
Dutch.
pennies a day.
He's Dutch. He's one of the Boers. He settled. His family settled there many, many years ago. He wants to get off the farm. But in any case, an umbrella company where people own their own studios, they rent out the rooms, they rent out the equipment. So when you say like film and all that, you're talking about more than just tabletop RPGs. You're talking about like video games. You're talking about movies. You're talking about TV shows, that sort of thing.
Everything in entertainment.
Wow. So this is going to be like more, not so much a tabletop RPG company, but an entertainment company.
Entertainment production company. We want to help protect artists and help artists produce their content. And then we're going to eventually have a website system set up similar to Patreon, mixed with like Etsy, where you'll be able to, let's say you're a cosplay artist, and you make props or costumes, and you'll be able to make your stuff, put it up on there, and people will be able to either contact you for help on a project, or they could just buy your content, or you can put up free content as well. Your run of the mill of everything that you could possibly do without breaking ethics on a lot of things.
And you said this particular game that I've got up on screen here. This comes because you noticed that there were no standards for expectations in gaming. So like with tabletop RPGs, there's kind of a mixed bag. You can make a BX system, you can make AD&D First Edition, Classic Traveler, 2D6, that sort of thing. So there were these systems established back in the 1970s and 80s. They're actually coming back in a very big way. But in video games, there's no standard template. That was like one of the things. and then there were others. I'm gonna let you go on that one because I think this feeds right into the origins of this guy right here, and we'll be getting into that in just a moment.
So yeah, when I was going to college to get my game design certificate, mainly because people weren't taking me seriously, even though I knew all the knowledge. I literally graduated, I didn't graduate. I got the certificate with nothing but A's and B's, and barely even trying. I came in there with a 75% ready game doc that made it all the way to the end of class first semester to get picked to be worked on the next year or next semester. And I didn't have to do much for it besides fix some typos.
Oh wow!
So like I just flew through that, and while I was learning about that stuff, I got to see more of the inside of the business aspect of game design, and I got to go to SiegeCon down here in Georgia, which is a game developer convention. And while I was there, I learned that there's no standardization whatsoever for game design documents. It is all, you have to make it up on the spot essentially, or you have to find a game doc that was released by a company already to use that as a template. And there was a few other templates that just were small and were made by college students, but there was nothing on a standardized level that would hit all the categories that you could just take and like subtract things from in order to build your game. And I wanted to do that. I wanted to have a template or some type of standardization for what people can expect from games.
See, this bothers me. Not only because, I am also now working in the game dev environment on video games. I have a boss and get paid and all that stuff. But as I mentioned to Wolfgar on the lead up to the show, I have a little thing I wanted to ramble about. Very, very brief. I'm going to cut to the bone here. Have you heard about the thing with Baldur's Gate 3?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Whether I wanted to hear it or
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, I'm not going to get into the particulars of who's making it. I'm not going to get into the particulars of why they're doing it. I just want to point out that a certain decision has been made for certain content in an upcoming game that there had to be no standards. Nobody at any point said, is this a good idea? Because they went with it. And it's not a good idea when your company's primary thrust is you're making the family-friendly version of D&D. What the hell?
Yeah, I had to wonder about how having relations with a bear was a good idea.
Oh, somebody pointed out over in the Gilded, if you didn't see, that as they maybe it was on a Twitch sphere somewhere. Somebody pointed out that actually, the other character in question is a vampire NPC you can add to your party, right? Which means there's every potential you're the bear. Yeah, that's worse, isn't it? Just the logic involved. This is supposed to be a product for the popular market for everybody, right? And it has this content in it, which I'll grant you, the average tabletop gaming experience can be a little base. We're all a little weird. All of our tables are different, and you do you at your table, right? But this is a video game. This is an electronic medium. This had to be scripted and written and prepared and had to be approved at every level by everyone involved. So this brings it back around to what Sergio's saying, that there are no standards whatsoever, because somebody should have standards somewhere.
But in this case, what we're talking about is like a standard template you could put up there and then customize to make your game. In that case, that's a different can of worms. But
no, I don't think it is, because arguably in development, you put up a piece of paper, right, and you say, okay, what is the rating of our game, right? And you measure your rating, and then within that rating, you develop all the content you're going to have in your game. right? And you plug and play what you want to keep and what you want to get rid of, right? Literally, someone in standards, someone in practices should have said, hey, maybe deeply personal congress with a bear is outside the meaning of our game.
Maybe.
Maybe, right?
Maybe.
And if you don't have that in your company, not even for a moral or ethical concern, but just for hey, can we run this by legal and say, is this going to be okay with everybody? You're screwing up.
If I were in standards and practices, which I've been, I don't know, ever since the 90s, I've kind of questioned some of the decisions they've made. But in this case, if they said, you're not putting that in that game, I would be like, yeah, I actually agree with that one. But
there's a surprisingly lack of UX designers in game design.
I'm sorry, what was that again?
There's a surprisingly lack of UX designers in game design. User experience designers in game design. Yeah, it's very weird because video games are literally user experience. But there's not user experience workers and people that understand user experience working on video games.
And that could lead to a lot of the problems that we see right now with games being buggy. I'll give you a good example. I was a big fan of the WWE games. I played as many as I could, especially since SmackDown versus Raw 2007. I love the in-depth character creation. I love that your character can have a career. I think the last one I bought was 2016. I loved it. I thought the world of it. And when I skipped a couple of years, and then I think it was 2K20 that had come up, and they were going to have the women's revolution in there, and I was like, okay, cool. I spent time creating a character, and then I found out the character I created was going to be the goofball secondary character to the primary female character in the story. Then that really didn't bother me too much, but then like some of the entrances, the characters would come out, their hair looked like a cosmic horror and looked like something straight out of Lovecraft, and just bugs. And I remember thinking, I tried to hang with it as long as I could. I really wanted to like it. It was probably one of the most disappointing, and this was the thing. I had such confidence in it. I bought the deluxe edition. I actually reserved that one because they were all out of the ones I really wanted. But when this thing came and I dropped it into my PlayStation and I started playing it, there was so much wrong with it. Like my character, I couldn't break my character off for him to have a career. You know, he had to have a career attached to this other character, and I'm like, why? Why would you do that? It was such a weird turn that I haven't bought one since. I was just like, nah, you'll push this one to production.
That is even more concerning because there's a webcomic. I tried to pull it up. I was going to throw it up at you guys, but it's been on hiatus. The site's actually down since 2016, called The Trenches. It's by the guys that do Penny Arcade. And the thing is that it was about being a game tester and game dev, right? And they had, in their comment section, people would come and tell real stories of game dev. And basically, the same through point through all of them was corporate doesn't listen to testers. Your job is to look for bugs, not to talk about quality of content, not to talk about the UX, ever, right? So, and then of course they get exploited in various ways. The fact that you were brought donuts one week is now enough. We don't have to give you benefits when we let you go. Wait, what? But the key element is like, wait a minute, let me get this straight. We don't have any dedicated UX, and we don't listen to the temp labor we got, whose job is technically to study UX. So is nobody actually checking what the final quality of the product is before it goes to market?
I really don't think so. But
Very little text. If it's playable, they'll patch it later. That's the motto now.
yeah, and this is largely like I've played. I've still got a PlayStation 4 sitting right here on my desk, and that's hooked to the very monitor I'm using, or the TV I'm using as a monitor right now. But like there are games I liked out of my entire library, which isn't very big. There are games I like. There are games, the games I hated, I traded in, and there are some games that I'm like, okay, that was fun, but there were some issues, and I've noticed. I'll bring up another example. Cyberpunk Red. Cyberpunk Red, in and of itself, I think I bought that one in PDF the day it dropped, and I also have it in print. But that particular game, I'm gonna show you where I think they did it right, and that's why I bring up R. Telsorian Games. They did this one right, and I'm gonna sing their praises for it. Cyberpunk Red had some issues, I think, mostly with timeline, but that's nothing I can't work around. But anything that they listed as DLC, like this errata that's constantly coming out, you go to their website, you download it for free, and you can choose to include whether or not to include it in your game. I was like, that's the way to do it. That's why I went back to tabletop games, because whatever was buggy in the rules or whatever you couldn't make sense of, you could adjudicate on the fly,
Yeah.
and look it up later. And if it worked for your table, it worked for your table. If it didn't, if the rule worked for your table, you incorporated it. If the rule didn't work, you rejected it and you went with your initial ruling. But it was always in the GM's notes how that would go, so it could be referenced later. And you don't have that with video games. You definitely don't have it with massive MMORPGs, because typically, especially in places like Second Life, some of the shittiest people have all the money to run a sim in the shittiest way possible. And I was like,
Yeah.
you know what? I remember, like, as little as I got to play tabletop, that's why I went back, because I was like, there was always an air of respect around the table. And when you had a problem player or a problem GM, the rest of the group could break off and form their own game and leave that GM high and dry if they wanted to. Or, you could have talks with them. You could usually fix those problems in one way or another much more directly.
Well,
And this particular game, I think, really does that well, or it will, because this D30 system, and that's what I want to touch on next.
Yeah.
This one, it's so open.
Before we touch on that, I want to go over one more thing about
Yeah, go ahead.
game design docs. The lack of standardization for game design docs is what's leading to the technical debt that's leading to games having so many glitches and problems later on, because nobody wants to take the time to actually put the effort into the game design document and think it all the way through. It leads up to technical debt later, and you get Assassin's Creed Unity on launch.
Yeah, you know what, that came to mind earlier, because there was I actually have that game and I was playing it, and there was a moment where my character, and I forget his name, that's how memorable it was for me. I had him jump up so he could climb to get away from these French guys, and no matter what I pushed, he just hung there. He just hung there and got stabbed and shanked to death. And I'm like, are you kidding me? This happened 3 times before I was actually able to get away from those guys. And I was like, this was a game, I think by the time I got it, I think it might have been a year or 2 old. And I was like, how was this not fixed? What the hell happened? The whole thing just like had me hanging there getting shanked. And I'm like, Jesus, this looks bad. This is really bad. But Assassin's Creed Valhalla worked pretty well. It worked pretty well. Some of the other games, the other Assassin's Creed games I have, they worked. I did see some of the earlier screenshots of people were nothing but brains, eyes, and teeth floating above their shoulders, and I'm like, what is this? Oh, thank fuck I missed that.
Well,
So
very
bad.
very briefly, I may have mentioned this before. That is the constant war I've had talking with console gamers, not about PC Master Race. Okay, I prefer PC for a number of reasons as a work tool, but uh, trying to tell people, it's like, okay, let me get this straight. You're gonna spend upward of $1,000 once you boil down all the doodads and the extra bits and the console war and so on, for an untried electronic device that is now your electronic device for the next 10 years, and you have to show brand loyalty because you don't have $1,000 a year to throw around buying a new console for each console, which would be upwards of $4,000 plus if you're following all of them simultaneously, right?
Yeah.
With no proof or verification that any of these games are making it good. In fact, there's every potential they will be very, very bad. And they're going to use live service model to make you beholden to it with the promise we'll repair it until it's not profitable to do so anymore, right?
Yeah.
Or just saying, just throwing this out there, I buy a tabletop game once, and even if the book is terrible, even if I'm really disappointed in it, I can take it and I can manipulate the system and ignore the content I don't like and use the stuff that I do like, and it's mine for perhaps the next 50 years if I take real good care of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's, to me, that speaks to the longevity of it.
Right.
But your D30 system here, I haven't seen like I was saying before, I haven't seen a D30 system since, actually, I don't even know if you call it a D30 system. DCC and MCC do use a D30, but I haven't seen one from that point until this, which this one makes a lot of sense. Tell us about it, man. Just go into it.
All right. So when I was doing research on what type of dice I should use, since I wanted to break away from Wizard of the Coast's D20 system, I was looking into D6s and D12s and just anything else other than a D20. And I ended up doing research into high stakes dice games like craps, like professional high level gambling games, where I learned that there were dice rolling techniques that can manipulate the dice further into your favor. You can do it because of the size of the dice, most people can do it with D6s. 2d6 is the average that is at the system, dice rolling technique is used for. But it can work on a D20 as well. And when I found this out, I was like, I got to do something to stop that. I want to stop that before it becomes an issue. Because I've been pretty good so far about predicting things becoming an issue later on. And I chose a D30 because A, it matched my theme of having 3 choices. B, it was so big that you couldn't use those dice rolling techniques unless you had like the hand of Shaq. And then C, the dice actually rolls. When you roll a D20 and you roll D6s, they normally bounce more than they do roll. A D6 particularly bounces way more than it rolls. Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
And
that's like almost the size of a golf ball.
Mm-hmm.
It's even like my hands are kind of small, but you know, like I can't roll it with a closed hand. I have to kind of open up and be very careful about how I roll it. Otherwise, it's just going to fly out of my hand here.
Yeah. Even I have big hands, and this thing's still big in my hands. So, but when you roll a D6, it bounces, and that bounce creates a kinetic stop and reduces kinetic energy, which makes the dice more predictable. And you can just play around with it, and you'll see, on average, you're rolling more consistently higher. And I just wanted that to stop. Because because of my autism, I like fair play. And because I have this knowledge, I can't help but to use it sometimes. So I wanted to make a system that I couldn't even cheat at. And trying to get the number you want on a D30 with how many sides it has and how big it is, not easy. Near impossible.
And on top of that, for those of you out there who are like, you know what, I don't know where to get a D30, and these are a little expensive. They can be. A tube of these will cost you, I think, like $35. And let's face it, you could get a tube of these with the first time fan kit for Mutant Crawl Classics for the same price. Do I recommend these? Yes, they're good, but I would recommend, if you're on a budget, Amazon has sets of these for like $15. You'll spend $20 less. You won't get the believe it or not, this is not a label, it's an insert, and it's a special item you can use in game. You won't be getting that, but you will be getting the full set, and I think you'll even get that golf ball size D100, which is, in my opinion, a little unnecessary. It's cool to have, but it's unnecessary. You just do it.
I thought about that.
I was actually going to ask. I was actually going to ask a serious question. If the issue is rolling and the D30 is rounder than the D20, why not just advocate for the D100 that's a perfect sphere? Because I've seen those.
Because you want it to stop eventually.
Well, on top of that, you can get around that by using the percentile die and another D10 to bypass that altogether.
Oh no, I get that. I do that. I'm just saying
that'll make your probability a lot more predictable.
Yeah, I just wanted something that people could still have in their hand, like a D20, but was just actually rolled. Because that feeling of rolling it and then getting a 30 or a 1 becomes more epic when the dice is 1 to 30.
And here we go. My friend Josh says, Team U is cheaper than Amazon for basic items, but if you want a nice set, we know a guy who custom 3D print stuff for a good rate. And hail to you, Josh. Good to have you aboard. Good to have you on. And you want it to stop eventually. Love that answer. That is true. I will say this, just to add to Sergio's point, a good dice tray, and as much as I absolutely loathe them, a dice tower will work. Mm-hmm. I mean, that you can still keep that randomization. You'll just kind of fix it to a smaller area. And if you roll it carefully, it's not going to bounce off the wall and go rolling across the table.
Mm. Oh, you just mentioned something about 3D printing dice.
Yeah.
In my very first Kickstarter I did, which is now a failed Kickstarter that is easily find. You can easily find, but you cannot easily find my current GoFundMe. But I mentioned in that I wanted the 3D print dice. This was around when 3D printers were still becoming popular, and I knew that they couldn't do it at the time. I'm pretty sure I said that in my original Kickstarter, but I wanted the 3D print dice when it became possible to make them balanced. Mm-hmm. I was laughed at for it. I was completely laughed at by most of the D&D community for that.
And now they're 3D printing dice.
All the time, yep. And I want a 3D print dice to sell, so if people, when they buy my books, they get a D30 with them.
Nice. Okay, well, that's even better. That means you don't really have to go out and purchase another set of dice. It means you don't have to go in search of, especially if you're brand new to that.
Yeah.
So there is that. Now, I will advocate for one thing. Personally, I've seen people using the very hard-edged dice. I love that, but I'm going to tell you right now, out of all of them, the one that scares me is that D4. Because
Stepping on that would be terrifying.
Caltrops.
Yep, the
Caltrops.
That's what they are. I'm going to show you. This is a D4 from this set, and this one nearly rolled off the table. Let's see, where is it? Here it is. The D4 from this set looks like this. So there is no question about which number you get.
Yeah.
I do favor, out of all the D4s, I've got this one. And out of all the mechanics that use a D3, it is a 6-sider with 1, 2, and 3 repeated. So this makes those two things to me make the set worth it. Plus that big chunky boy of a D30 there. So I do like the edge dice. They are nice. I think they probably fare a little better than some of these softer edged, like that guy right there. But honestly, when you get right down to it, I do like for my dice to roll a little bit. So you do want them to stop eventually, but I do like for them to roll.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's talk about your math here. Just kind of as an aside, because we didn't talk about this yesterday. On your preferences on dice, do you prefer that harder edge, or the sharper edge, or do you prefer that kind of like rounded edge to them?
I don't really care. Honestly, if I have one that has a sharper edge, it just becomes a fidget toy. Because my autism, my sense of touch is kind of heightened. People with autism have what will sensory overloads. They have sensory overloads where all their senses become extremely heightened. Most of the time, for most people with autism, it's in short bursts. But ever since I was young, for me, I've always been, while everybody else was at a 5 on sensory level, I've always been at like an 8. If I'm in a house with a fire alarm that's beeping because the battery's dead, everybody else can tune it out. But 3 hours in, I'm still hearing it. If I'm at a restaurant, I can't tune out all the
ambient noise
of the silverware and plates clanging together. And if I stay in there too long, I start to get migraines.
Oh, jeez.
So it becomes a fidget toy, and then if it's round, it just feels good in my hand. So for me, it doesn't matter either way.
So with your system, you've eliminated the aspect that someone could cheat.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see, that led into something else I really wanted to talk about here. And where is it? Yeah, here we are. Before I get to this, though, I'm gonna get to this part right here, because when we're talking about those templates, I will get back to this one point, and I'll highlight it just for my own sake here. But let's talk about how the templates would be used, because this system right here is a template. As it stands right now, all 26 pages, that's what it is. It's a template, and we've got everything from karma points, alignment scales, and your alignment scale dwarfed AD&D's alignment scale big time. You got luck and ability scores, post living beings ability system. So yes, your character once dead can be dead, but only in a sense. It sounds like it would be a bit of a minor inconvenience for some. We got action economy, disadvantage systems. So let's talk about how the template itself would be used. I know you really wanted to get in depth on that, but how would you go about that? Let's get your take on it.
While you're using the pre-alpha, essentially just take anything that's not in the pre-alpha and just take it from D&D. Take it from 5e and put it in and use that to substitute all of your other stuff. Anything that's in the pre-alpha, just you can actually choose on whether or not you want certain things because as y'all were saying before, being able to just modify and adjust things the way y'all want if you're not happy with a rule is built into the system. So you can take away the luck system and the game will still play just as fine. You could take away the complexity of the social system and you can just bring it down to the numbers of a positive, negative, and neutral outcome, and the game will still work just as fine. So it's just like how you were talking about earlier. You'd be able to take everything you want away, or you take everything you want, keep it. Take everything you don't want, take it away. You still be able to play without it really affecting you.
And so, and that's what you're talking about right here with that social encounter system. So anywhere from 1 to 10 would be negative, so that would be against you. 11 to 20 would be neutral, so you really don't have a change there. And then 21 to 30 would be definitely in your favor, with a 30 being like, that would be sort of a critical success there.
Yeah.
I would hate to be the guy who rolled a 1 on a D30. I would hate to be that. I would hate to be that guy. Holy crap!
It feels like an epic loss.
That would just be like. I'll put it to you this way. And this is just what I'm getting for it. Feel free to jump in and correct. But like me personally, I have just a weakness for any pretty woman with very dark hair and these bright blue eyes, and that would be like me walking up to her, asking her, if she needed help with anything, and then just going, "Hi, I like tater tots." that would be the one I rolled on a D30. Right,
you suddenly turn into Adam Sandler, and you're like, "Want to touch the boobies?" Like,
that would be a 2, because that would be marginally better. I like tater tots, and just walking away, going, "Oh, fuck." Meanwhile, that 30 would be like, "Hi, how can I help you? By the way, lovely hair and eye color combo." That would be my D30 right there.
How you doing?
How you doing? Yeah. I know you never look another man in the eye while you eating a corn dog. How you doing? To quote Enzo Amore, I miss him. I do miss him. He did make Monday Night Raw watchable for me. Irritating though he could be. But anyway, like that would be the example I would use. Just, I just totally turn into a drooling idiot. And that's in the social encounter.
Yeah.
But we also have like luck encounters and stuff like that we're going to get to. But from there, this is the one I really wanted to talk about, that framework for your own games. And this is what we kind of touched on it earlier when you said, you use this template here. You create your own system, your own game.
Yeah, when it's completely filled
made
out,
with Oblivion Oddities rule system. Here you go.
Yep, when it's completely filled out and after the game's completely done, you would be able to use everything in the game to make your own game if you want it. Because I'm not just giving you I'm not just making stuff and then giving it to you. I'm giving you all the base components that I use in order to make something. So you will have all the base components needed to make a class in the system or in the books. You will be able to use that to make your own class. Same with race, same with animals, same with plants, same with spells, so on and so forth.
And Joe, I think you were talking about this last night on the Guild server. I caught it before I went to bed. You and I both kind of suffer the same problem, where we could come up with lore and we could come up with all kinds of setting material for days. Mechanics, we're just like, nah, we're like coming up with the stat blocks and everything. Mainly because I'm going to admit, when it comes to writing a game, I have no idea what I'm doing.
It is much easier to develop a game when you're using an extant system with extant permutations, right? Than it is to come up with wholly new mechanics. And the weird part is, specifically for what I'm working on, is I'm working within a sphere of existing mechanics. Like, I have some guidelines, right? But I'm also trying to, be the change you want to be. Live out the things you claim. I'm also trying to expand those rules to add more content. Because, like, that's what I keep saying when it comes to OSR stuff, is like, we're replicating, we're not innovating, and that's a problem creatively. We need to make more new things. But making new things is 100% really hard, guys.
I'm going to disagree only slightly, because with the OGL scandal, so many people looked at Wizards of the Coast, and even though they I'm gonna gloat a little bit, just a touch.
Just a little.
Here comes some Schadenfreude from Raven here. The thing is, even though they put so much in Creative Commons, even though they reversed course, they showed we can't trust them.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get to what they put in there just in just a second. But what they did was they essentially tried to hamstring the entire industry behind our backs. And when I mean I mean players, GMs, people who create stuff. They tried so hard to just hamstring everyone, extort everyone. They cut some people in on sweetheart deals because they knew they would lose if they didn't have those bigger companies on their side. And then when they got caught, they tried to walk it back, and then they tried to do it anyway. When the feedback came back overwhelmingly negative, that's when they decided to reverse course. Then they started putting things in Creative Commons, which now they can't legally touch it, but they did accidentally put Strahd von Zarovich in there. Oops. Which,
I get that, and we can.
It's so ironic because the acronym, Sergio, for your company is OOPS. It's the one thing you never want to hear a Kender say.
I get what you're saying. You and I can absolutely go off on a big tangent that we don't have time for about the industry. But what I'm specifically getting at, though, is that there's a concerted group of grogs, because we're all grogs, but there are different breeds of grog, if you will, who believe that, like, nothing innovated since Gary left TSR has ever been good, right? And it's like, yeah, that's an opinion. They're allowed to have that. That's a thing that exists, right? But the OSR is a defiance of current gaming trends, not a defiance of the idea that games must evolve, change, or become nuanced at new things.
Right.
Nothing says we can't create while also, recreating and respecting what came before. In fact, we probably should 100% respect what came before.
And just as an example, I wanted to point this out because with what Wizards of the Coast did, when they showed we couldn't trust them, I think a lot of creators just turned away from them and made post-OGL games. Like, I just got my softcover of Basic Fantasy 4th edition in yesterday. I haven't really had too much of a chance to peek into it except for the PDF. I got the hardcover coming in like Monday or Tuesday. But this is a prime example because much of the mechanics for the Red Room's Wretched game had changed. Castles and Crusades are changing some terminology, but the Siege Engine's all their own. And then, other games too had to kind of innovate the way they approached games and just the mechanics of it, because they want, especially with like Wasted Lands. Wasted Lands is in a Kickstarter right now. That's Jason Bay's game. That's also linked, and if it's not, I'll put it in there because I did a stupid and didn't put it in there. But that game got delayed because of that. So I think for what it's worth, I think a lot of independent gamers and game creators, designers, etc. They really went out of their way to just because look, let's face it. Professor Dungeon Master brought this up in a video I watched yesterday. He said, could they still sue? Yeah, they could. As a matter of fact, we just covered what they did several years ago over a word, and they could still sue. I mean, they'd probably lose in court. That's why, like, I forget what his example was. He said they could still sue, but they know if they did, they'd lose everything. Like Hasbro could still sue, but if they did, they would have the entire gaming community turn on them.
Well, even if they
a niche product, and that they would lose it all if they did it. But I think there has been some innovation because a lot of people kind of felt forced to do it, and I think a lot of these games are better for it now.
Well, as has been stated, the end game is threat of economic sufferance by failure. But even if they won, and let's hypothetically imagine a universe where they decide to take it to trial and it goes to a judge, and that judge is so out of it that they actually agree with WotC. It's happened before, right?
Yeah.
The thing is that what immediately follows is a massive class action lawsuit. And as scary as one small game designer is, absolutely, do they really want to deal with all of us having lost our shit, gathered up all of our dollary dues, and gotten a big lawyer to front us? No, they don't want to deal with that. That's going to be a giant kerfuffle and look bad for the PR office, and legal just says let's not do that.
Yeah.
They'd rather we stay small and individual and be individually afraid of a big stick.
Yeah, I think so too. But the for getting back to the game here,
yeah,
I think this was a good one. So even a group of new players can learn to play the game simply by taking away the more complex rules, and then they can add those complex rules later on down the timeline. Yeah, I think that's accurate because we did talk about that yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. I did ask about the direction of this one. I think this is going to be one of the things because I asked specifically just because I wanted to clear it up before I came on here was, like one of the things that as I'm reading this, I knew it was a template going in, and I knew it was a set of like standard stuff. But one of the things that I kind of mused over while I was reading it was, okay, it's only 26 pages, and yes, there's complexity in there, there's simplicity, so we got a nice mix of both. But my question was, there are games like Amazing Adventures, GURPS, Savage Worlds, Genesis. How would this differ from those games? And I think I was asking, would it have a specific direction, or would it be like just a universal system? And you mentioned like kind of the direction you wanted to take it, and I'll let you take that one away.
Yeah, so I want it to be a universal system that can be played through any genre, where you could just flavor things in order to fit the genre and the story that you want to tell better. I'm going to make campaign settings for everything, but you could take the rules and then create your entire own universe, and it would still fit and work. It's a universal system, while at the same time, I'm trying to make it familiar enough and easily playable enough for anybody to be able to pick up.
And your initial setting, you were telling me about a fantasy setting, but this is not like I mentioned this. I was like, I have so many fantasy settings right now that it really has to stand out for me to go, yeah, I'll jump on that one. But even if it's a new edition.
Oh God.
Oh God.
Wolfgar.
Oh no.
They sent the Black Bag Brigade after him.
Uh-oh. I must have pissed somebody off because I just dropped out momentarily.
You stalled, and you had this excellent temporary image that's not going to live forever on the stream of you just like with your head back and your mouth open, staring off into space. Just.
My open mouth moment. So, but I was saying, like, for fantasy settings.
So what you're saying, Rolfgar, is you like tater tots.
But with fantasy settings, like, it has to stand out. And you gave me one yesterday. I was like, oh, that was like super interesting, dude. Tell us about your fantasy setting, because this one, guys, you are not going to want to miss this. This sounds just awesome. Go ahead, dude.
So the setting takes place during what would be considered the 16th and 17th century in our world. But it's filled with magic, psionics, or psychic people and beings, and people who have just completely withdrawn from magic. The core, where the name Oblivion Oddities comes from, is there's a company that's inside of the world called Oblivion Oddities. It's created by a character that's going to be introduced in the second fantasy fiction book I write for the story and events that lead up to the current era that you're playing in. This company has spent the last 3,000 years creating essentially capitalism in a high fantasy world, making a connection with just about every major trade route and trade or point for entry along every continent, but the inside isn't really explored. It's only the outside. They spent 3,000 years putting up building shops all over the place, just on the outside, and saturated the market to the point where you have bags of holding that are now like 5 gold pieces. There are items that are considered rare in D&D are extremely common in Oblivion Oddities. And we have guns where you can be a gunslinger that enchants your bullets. We have I'm going to go back. So for the company inside of the world, they are this capitalistic company that is selling goods and items and encouraging people to be adventurers with a 1950s mega corporation style feeling. So you get a little bit of that Fallout feeling when it comes to seeing advertisements for the company. And
so it's almost like a 16th, 17th century version of Mad Men almost.
Yeah. And the company secretly on the down low will fund and help give supplies and weapons to what they call dungeon punks, which are essentially revolutionary and rebels. So you have this company that is going around putting up buildings and stores while secretly funding revolutions.
It sounds like they're going to be the ones, like the executives of that company will be the ones living in castles and possibly poisoning the minds of kings and things like that.
Well, y'all have
like
to figure that
one out. Worm tongue almost.
You'll have to figure that one out when y'all go through the story.
That's fine, because like if I were to run that as a GM, that's exactly how I would do it. Is like you'd have the corporate level Grima Wormtongue just in the ear of the king there, just, or in the ear of royalty, just when their people start going a little nuts over something like a price hike or price controls, you would have one of them. I think we need to manage their expectations, or something like that. Because I don't know. To me, it's funny. I would do something like that. It would be a definite parody of major companies. But this is one Lucky Duck pointed out. The inclusion of new players is important because when something is too complex, it makes it hard to capture the youthful want of learning a new game. That's true. So that makes it a great idea for a game. I think absolutely 100% right, because that was one of the reasons when I pulled Pathfinder off the shelf, I was aware that it was like 3 manuals in one, but it was like, I'm even just looking at first edition and it's kind of crunchy, and they didn't take a whole lot of crunch out of it. There are some things that they do better than D&D 5th edition from what Luke Hart has said on his channel, which I really wish the staff of Paizo would just say that, just like if you're presenting the game, just say that, here's what we do better than D&D 5th edition. Here's how we fix these problems. But it took Luke Hart to point that out. And I was like, had he gotten to me sooner, I probably would have checked out 2nd edition. But instead, I went looking for 1st edition. I got it. And looking at it, it's rather crunchy. And this is coming from a guy who played AD&D 2nd edition, which had a lot of crunch to it. But with like the box sets that were out there, we were kind of eased into it. We didn't just go out and buy a book back then. We bought that box set, and when it's entitled First Quest or Intro to AD&D 2nd edition, it made it easier to kind of get into that without having to look at a massive like player's handbook or the monstrous manual or the DM's guide. Jeez, that thing's thick, and just nope right out of it. Because I know with some people, I introduce games all the time, and I'm like, this one's not a really big book at all. This one's not a really big book at all. And some of them, I'll warn them, like Dungeon Crawl Classics, big book, but half of it is spells. So the first 150 pages are all game mechanics, classes, races, et cetera, et cetera. The last 150 pages are spells for your wizard. So that one is not as complex as it seems. But I definitely agree with the sentiment that not scaring them off is probably best. Old School Essentials, it has done one of the things you proposed, which I was asking about yesterday, which was I think it was about the books themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll kind of get into the mechanics, but yeah, go ahead with the books themselves, because I did ask and I didn't think to write this one down, but good thing I remembered it. The book itself, I know I said, how big would this be? And you were like, it would just be unwieldy if we put it all into one book. So yeah. You said, I think, series of like smaller books.
Mm-hmm. If people want to learn more about the story, they can go onto the GoFundMe. It's actually under the books. But the books, there are going to be a total of 6 core rule books and then 2 bonus books. Three of the core rule books are strictly for players, that it's all the information they need in order to play. The other 3 are for game masters, and it has the extra information needed in order to build a game and run a game. And then I have 2 more books, which is just bonus information that's not actually needed, but it flavors things up better.
So, and I think you mentioned that these books will be about half the size of the 5th edition player handbook.
Yeah, each one should be about half the size of the 5th edition player handbook. Each one except for the spell book. I'm going to go ahead and say that one right now. That's the only one I will not be able to get to half the size of a player's handbook. It might be a full player's handbook size.
Oh, okay. So actually, a full player's handbook's worth of spells. Dude, we have things like Vault of Magic by Kobold Press. That one is just slightly bigger than the player's handbook for D&D, but still, like, those books and the monster manuals are my absolute favorite books to look at. So I don't think I would begrudge a larger book in that sense.
Then everything's gonna be fine. But yeah, the main reason I wanted to split them up was because when people are at game playing, eventually they're going to argue about a rule. And if you have rules in the same book, you have to flip back and forth, or multiple people have to have the same book. If I have them in multiple books, then people can literally both flip open each book, go to the rule in each book, and then just settle the disagreement right then and there. There wouldn't be, and the entire group wouldn't have to buy the entire set of books.
So these books would be sold separately, I take it.
You can buy them separately or in sets.
Oh, or in sets.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm gonna
cool.
make sure
Okay.
that you'll be able to buy them in the sets of their relation. So
Yeah.
2, 3, 6, and 8.
And there's kind of going back to old school essentials, they kind of did the same thing where I've got classic in print in one of my cabinets here, but I also have classic and advanced in the box sets, and those were broken down into, I think they took that big core the rules tome and the players tome, and they broke them down into smaller books, which I thought was excellent because I just don't have a lot of time. I'm constantly on the go. I'm constantly either prepping one of these, or I'm prepping for a reading or something else. So a guy who's just, it's not that I don't have an attention span. I do, but I don't have a lot of time. I have to manage it very wisely. So being able to sit down with a smaller book and read that makes a lot more sense than me having to kind of, take down a much larger book into smaller chunks. And, that's why I like that kind of thing. But let's see, let's get back into it. And I think we've got, I think I'm going to just kind of go with it. So this is kind of in its rough draft pre-alpha right now.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about that social encounter score. Did you want to expand on that one? Because I think this the social encounter score does get a little more complex.
Yeah, it does.
And this is where it was kind of going to go. You've got the social situations here, emotional goals, positive motivation outcomes, negative motivation outcomes, just all kinds of stuff here. And go ahead.
So when you're in a social encounter, you decide you wanted to do a social encounter, and you have a goal in mind.
Mm-hmm.
You're essentially you'll get so many turns in order to try and reach your goal. Because you can't spend there all day just talking to somebody. They're eventually going to get annoyed at you, and you're going to just fail your goal.
Yeah.
So you'll try to make sure that by the end of the encounter, you're in the positive. If you're in the negative, you fail and you get an opposite effect.
Right.
So if your goal is to try and cheer up a child, then if you fail, you could possibly traumatize them.
Oh, ouch. That's I can relate to that, because typically when I'm encountering children at work, they're usually a little they're getting a little out of hand, and mom or dad's trying to do business, and I'll just break out with a goofy voice, and sometimes they laugh and they want to play along. Sometimes they just stare at me like I wasn't prepared for that grown man to make that sound today. And then I've had a few where they were ones on a D30, and they just start crying. Like, no explanation, they just start crying. It's like, okay, guess that wasn't going to work today. But I think I don't know, Cal, I think you were referring to breaking down those much larger, chunkier books into like reading sessions or something like that. I think that's what he was talking about. I'm sorry, I'm a little late to the comments on that one because I'm kind of going through this as well. But this is the one I think stood out to me. when I first read it.
Bullshit
This is
mode.
bullshit mode. And I remember you telling me how you got here. Dude, share this story because it's so awesome.
So before I go over that, if you don't want your negative outcome to be 1 through 10, your neutral outcome to be 11 through 20, and your positive outcome to be 21 through 30, you can actually pick which one you want: positive, neutral, and negative. And that's
so you can swap them around.
Yeah, you can swap them around, which adds a little bit more randomness to it if you feel like it.
Okay.
There's the standard level of play where you just use it as it is. Then you have a challenging mode, which is rematching them at the start of each of your rounds while not being able to match the same set twice. You get hardcore mode, which is at the start of each of your each turn. And then you have bullshit mode, which is every action you have to reset them.
And did that feed into your luck system, or was that something separate?
That was something separate.
Okay.
And the reason I made it this is bullshit mode is because of when I was young, I was non-verbal. I wasn't very verbal because of my autism, and because I wasn't verbal, my mom was able to teach me numbers very well, and I could understand numbers extremely well. By the time I was in high school, I was doing advanced calculus in my head. But when I was 7 to 8 years old, we had a Super Nintendo in the game Mega Man X, and I spent 8 hours one night trying to figure out the master code. And for anybody that doesn't understand the Mega Man X code system, for everything you do and for every time you achieve a level and you find a new item, there is a unique code for it. The codes are permanently set. And one night I was playing through, I got new items, and I noticed that some of the codes that I was writing down started to match up. There were just certain numbers at certain parts that were matching up. Then I spent about 2 hours playing around, trying to get more information on the codes and finding out more codes. Writing this all down. It's about that point I realized that there's math going on. For the next 4 to 5 hours after that, I spend the entire night just figuring out trying to get to the master code. The math was becoming easier and easier as I went, and I eventually get to the point where I'm at like 90%. And I'm flipping out because I'm like, yes, I've made it so far. But it's at this point where I start to run out of paper. I no longer have anything to write down, and I can't go to my mom because it's in the middle of the night. School's in just a few hours, and I'm supposed to be sleeping. So I keep going. I'd start doing the math in my head, and I keep going. I get to 99%. I'm flipping out, and then I go back, and I finally get to 100. I finally get 100%. It's time for school. Now, I left it on, saying that I would come back and I'll play it. My mom didn't know any of this, and she ended up turning the game off.
Oh, no.
Yeah, she ended up turning the game off. When I got home, I was so disappointed. I just went to bed and I slept for the next day.
No.
But I spent 8 hours getting to the master code. I still love the game. I'll still play it. I will not do that ever again.
Wow. Oh my gosh. That's what leads us to this is bullshit mode.
The math system that's used for that was created by high-level college students, just so they could have a complicated system for their the coding to understand the game and the save points. And yet, as an 8-year-old, as a 7 to 8-year-old, I was able to figure it out.
Oh wow. Yo, that's I'm gonna say, since you told me that story yesterday, it has been on my mind, and I cannot imagine the disappointment. Like
Bullshit. Absolute
yeah,
bullshit.
at that point, I think I would have I would have done the same thing. If I had just spent 8 hours trying to get myself to that level, only for it to be negated by a power switch. Oh my goodness, I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure I probably would have lost it at least a little bit.
that level of frustration I felt is what inspired This Is Bullshit mode.
Modern kids will never understand what we had to go through as young people,
Oh, never.
because as parents, you know, we're computer and console savvy. If they're like, I want to leave this running, I'll be back later. Then we're like, okay, cool, because we get that, right?
Yeah.
But they've never heard a mom be like, well, it's just a video game. You just play it again. You'll do fine. It's like, thanks, mom.
It's like, let me show you what 8 hours of work looks like, Mom. Here's the paper. I ran out.
Well, why does it take 8 hours? Why don't you just put in the code and do the thing
We're doing
the
math.
and the
We're doing
boots?
math.
It's
We're
like,
doing math. The very thing you taught me. It's doing the very thing you taught me.
I didn't even know that it was college level
as
math.
much as I give the old people a hard time, I do have to give credit where credit's due. I did have a map of Hyrule as a kid. Now,
Oh, yeah.
it was not actually a map of Hyrule. What it was is that my father was that kind of crazy man, right? He was playing the original Legend of Zelda on Nintendo, okay? And he figured out, just like anybody who's paying attention, that obviously the various individual screens are different segments of the thing.
Yeah.
So he took one of these big desk pages that's like a piece of graph paper for your desk, right? If you've ever seen one of these, they're big, right?
Yeah.
And he drew, each square was a square of in-game screen. Screen by screen, he drew and mapped Hyrule by hand. So I had a map of Hyrule by hand that my father had made, and it's like, yeah, we don't get coffee on this. We don't spill nothing on this, because he would have lost his ever-loving mind.
Oh, yeah. And see, like a friend of mine who in the neighborhood I lived in, he was just down the street from me. He was the first kid on our block to have a Nintendo, and he also got a subscription to Nintendo Power Magazine for a little while.
Oh my god!
And look, when he got Legend of Zelda, I will never forget the day he unboxed that thing. That golden cartridge came out of that slip cover. It went into the console itself, and before he hit the power button on that thing, before he pressed it down and closed the lid, I will never forget this. He goes, "Hey, there's something else in the box." I went, "What?" He pulled out a poster map of all of Hyrule, and that thing hung on his wall for, oh my gosh, I couldn't tell. I think that thing hung up on his wall until he moved away the first time, came back, it went back on his wall, and then he moved away that second time, and it was still on his wall, like when he moved away. And we had only one minor difficulty with it, where the path through that forest was pretty clear, but every time we kept moving, it was just the same part of the forest over and over again. We didn't know you had to go up, over, down, over, and then you were clear. So it took us a little while to figure that one out. We didn't have strategy guides just yet, and what we could get from Nintendo Power was not a lot, but occasionally we found those gems. It's like the people who read Dragon Magazine, Dungeon Magazine, and got all the little extras that came with that for their tabletop games. That was Nintendo Power to us. And even like later on in life, we got like what was it? Game Pro magazine, I think, was one or something like that, and we read it. We would buy an issue. That issue would get passed around like a joint at a Pink Floyd concert religiously. We read that one for months and just, mostly laugh at some of the stuff that was in there, because back then game journalism was actually game journalism. It wasn't when they got a game for review, they were pretty impartial about it, but they would still make fun of stuff. They would still do that. But anyway, let's talk about that luck system, because I know this is bullshit mode didn't really feed into that luck system, but that was one of the things that you really wanted to cover. That's one I was really interested in.
The D30 system is also, before I go over that real quick, the D30 system is also used for mini games and also used for skill checks. And if you automatically succeed on a skill check because your skills are so high, it changes a little bit from being a fumbling success, which is you succeed, but like you fall on your ass as you do it. A basic success where it's not flash, you succeed, it's not flashy, doesn't take up too much time, but doesn't take forever. And then a masterful success is you did it with such style and grace that everybody in the room thinks you're cool. And then you have the mini games that it's also used for, where if you fumble, you'll get you can end up losing some speed or losing a portion of your speed, but if you get masterful, you'll end up gaining more speed if you're racing. So if
here we go. Yeah, right here. So the D30 mini game system.
Mm-hmm.
So each player will take a number of actions equal to their total number of actions to roll the D30 and see if things go in your favor or against your favor.
Yep.
And there it is right there. So the fumbling will give you a -1 point. So maybe you push that bad guy off the top of a building, but you're probably going to almost go off the edge yourself and come back going, yeah, I meant to do that. With the basic, you managed to just push the guy off the edge of the building. He didn't see it coming. Mm-hmm. With Masterful, you do a Chuck Norris roundhouse kick, and he goes flying, and it's cinematic and epic.
Yep. If you were doing one of those games where I can't remember what they're called right now, but you stand on a pole and you try and knock each other off, that would work perfectly for that situation.
Right on.
If you scroll down a little bit, physical abilities has a little bit of separate rules where you lose some accuracy or gain some accuracy. Mental abilities have a little bit of a change in rules. Mm-hmm. And then luck and gambling has a little bit of a change in rules. But the system itself stays the same of positive, negative, and neutral.
Right. And then we have some more stuff down here. So you got your lifting, pulling, throwing, catching, MMA, grappling, sparring, juggling, stuff like that. And then your luck and charisma stuff here, constitution. There's literally something for every attribute, I've noticed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the things you see double attributes on, you're just going to add like your strength modifier twice if it says strength plus strength. Okay. Dexterity plus dexterity, you add it twice. For dexterity plus wisdom, you'll add both of those to your D30 roll.
Yeah, so like the foot and parkour or free running, that's dexterity plus dexterity. So you'd be adding that one 2 times instead of just the 1.
Correct.
Okay. And then I noticed like luck and charisma. So you put role playing as a part of luck and charisma. I think that would be more akin to like trying a little bit of social engineering. Would that be correct? Yeah.
Anything from acting on stage to playing an actual role-playing game within game and getting extremely meta with it.
So like being on stage and then suddenly breaking the fourth wall for a moment and then coming right back into it very smoothly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And this one, the luck system, I like how you put that. It's better to be lucky than skilled, or better to be lucky than good in some cases. This is the one we talked about yesterday, and I was like, oh snap. Because remember, guys, that big guy right there at the bottom, you roll that at the beginning of each session before the game begins. You can choose to have all your players roll that D30. Wherever that number die lands on is your luck ability score for the session. Your luck will change every session. So if you get a 30 or higher on attack rolls, it counts as a crit. Naturally, you can't crit on skills, but you can auto success on anything. Your skill modifier is ×3 plus the number of successes. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because after everyone gets their luck modifiers, it's time to determine the group's luck modifier, which will be added to all the GM rolls behind the scenes. So all you do is add everyone else's luck modifier together, divide it by 2. If everyone gets a 30, and then there are 6 people in the party, that's 60 divided by 2, so 30. So the group's luck modifier would be +30 added to the beginning of all the rolls that the DM will make, or GM rather, that affects the entire group out of combat in a positive way, including rolling for loot. But it's a negative in all rolls against the party for like rolling random encounter or area of effects. So yeah, go into detail on this one. I know this is one you really want to talk about, and I'm here for it. So let's get it.
So I wanted to incorporate luck into the system because it would help with the random number generation guy. And like we already know that they exist. Might as well add them to the game. And one day I was just relaxing, smoking a lot, just having a really good day. And it was one of my off days. I wasn't supposed to be working that day. And I was just rolling my die over and over again. And I thought to myself, what if at the beginning of every session you had to re-roll your proficiency? And that's what it was going to be originally. You re-rolled your proficiency. And then I realized it would be better for luck. And when I tried it out, it just ended up working first try. Because of me being a UX researcher and designer, I have to create fake profiles of supposedly real people and how they would think, how they would act, the things they would say, so on and so forth. And I would have to play like a big session essentially by myself, role-playing people that are role-playing people and looking kind of crazy while I do it. But the rolling the D30 to see what your luck modifier is going to be at the beginning of each session ended up just playing out really well on determining what kind of session you're going to have. You'll know right away if you're going to have an extremely lucky session or an extremely unlucky session.
And with the luck system, these random rolls on this guy right here.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about that one yesterday too.
Luck is added to absolutely everything you roll.
And this is one of the things I've seen a lot of drama over this particular topic. The randomly rolled encounters, the world, things like that. A lot of people, primarily around the culture of 5th edition, not so much 5th edition itself, but around the culture of 5th edition, there seems to be this prevailing school of thought that it takes away from player agency. And the fact is that this system is great for what I call the lazy GM, the one who would just rather, instead of like preparing this setting, that everything in your setting is great, it works, then it runs into that first player encounter and someone is eventually going to break it. rather than do that, rolling out your world, rolling out those random encounters, rolling out dungeons and things like that tends to work a lot better because, again, as you pointed out, no one's going to be cheating at this. There's no dice fudging.
Yeah. You would literally have to have the hands of Shaq in order to be able to fudge the dice on this game.
So, like one of the, let's say, I got a supplement right here, and this is by our friend, the Basic Expert, and it's this guy right here, where you just, if you're, you roll that, you roll your die, and then that becomes part of your map, and whoever's mapping it out would be, of course, drawing it. But this one, rolling this big old dude right here is going to be even to me it'd be a lot more fun because you never know what's around the corner and you have to deal with that. So your luck could be bad one session. You could still succeed even with the worst luck, but there's a chance that you might want to kind of cool the heroics, those heroic actions if it's kind of a bad day.
Yeah, if let's say everybody isn't min-maxing their character, even though the game's designed for you to be able to min-max your character. Let's say everybody decides that they're not going to min-max and they're just going to try and make more normal characters. There's going to be somebody that might decide to min-max while everybody else doesn't. And that usually leads to a problem within the group of that person outshining everybody. The luck ability would essentially balance that out because somebody that didn't min-max their character because they rolled high on luck would probably be able to balance out with a min-max character. And that max level character rolling low would probably take all the shine off of them for that session.
Well, it also addresses a problem that I've talked about before. There are people who get really bent when you talk about the very notion of fudging dice. Why would you fudge dice? You should never fudge dice. Fudging dice is the devil and Satan, and you're wrong, and you're a heretic. But the thing is that as a GM, right, on occasion in a calculated format, I admit I have fudged dice, and it's like, why? It's for your story? It's like, no, not for the story. The story is determined by randomization. But every so often, you have a friend who they just have a bad night. They literally just have the night where they cannot roll a success to save their lives. And sometimes your friends are kind of competitive and get really upset when just the dice gods hate them. It happens. That's why it's called randomization. It doesn't matter how severe the roll is. It could be an incredibly minor roll. It could be a can you find information about where to get shoes roll, right? And you just fail everything all the time and feel like an idiot. Nobody likes that. So having mechanics where, raw luck is a factor, it does ameliorate some of that, because then not every single roll is a life or death struggle, thank God.
Yeah, it bends the random number god into your favor just a little bit, because you can't for a normal start of a session, you can't roll below, or you can't get a luck modifier below 0. There will be ways for you to be able to get a negative luck modifier, but there'll be special ways. There will not be just an inherent in the system way to do it on the start of the session without having special circumstances beforehand.
Well, this is also where the killer GM sobriquet comes from, because I grew up playing older D&D. I run my D&D in an older style, right? So when I hook up with a bunch of newbies who are 5e or 3e era, who have never experienced things like police your brass, track your ammunition, make sure you have enough food and water, because all of this stuff matters. They sometimes get really bent when it's like, oh look, you encountered a bunch of monsters that you thought you could handle, and you found out you couldn't, because guess what? This idea of scaling encounters to your level is a fallacy, right?
Mhm.
Because the number of goblins don't care how many of you there are. They're going to be goblins, right?
Mhm.
uh some people take that to be, well, you're one of those GMs that likes to kill people. It's like, no, I would like you to run away. I would like you to avail yourselves of tactical thinking. And again, if you have a luck mechanic, if you have mechanics in place to encourage people to both take risks and then moderate their risks with reason, it's like,
Mhm.
I've done a bunch of heroic shit today, and I'm really literally pressing my luck. Maybe I should stop.
Mhm.
Just maybe. Just kinda.
Yeah, and depending on what your modifier is, so let's say you roll a 30 and you have a plus 10.
Yeah.
Because in Oblivion Oddities, it's every 3 points you go up a modifier point. You can only go down to negative 15 for ability scores. And after that, if any of your ability scores go past negative 15, auto death. Instant
Yeah.
death. But they go up as much as you want. They can go up infinitely as long as you just, every 3 points, you have an additional modifier. So let's say you rolled a 30 on your modifier for your modifier roll, and you got plus 10. You can actually lose a point for your luck modifier to re-roll. So you would drop yourself down from a plus 10 to a plus 9, but you would get a re-roll.
And there were a few other things that you wanted to cover here. This is the one I think was one that we really talked about quite a bit yesterday. The magic and music system for bards. This would include uh, like real world magic, occultism, psychology, real world music theory too,
Yes.
and that the player would also be encouraged to do research so they could understand why these bards and mages in your game would, why they do what they do, why they get what they get, why it works.
Yeah. So this is something me and Pathfinder are currently in competition with, because when they released their newest Pathfinder edition statement, I can't remember what it's called. It's not 2E. It's whatever they're doing next.
Mhm.
They put in their document one little tiny line after I released my Kickstarter, or not my Kickstarter, my GoFundMe, that they were going to be adding rules for music and magic. And I was like, you had to have saw mine and just threw that in there last second, because it was like 2-3 weeks after I posted up. But I'm going to be using real world music theory, color theory, psychology, and occultism in order to help people understand uh, the magic that's in the world. So for music, since I'm using real world magic or real world music theory, if you play a bard and you play an instrument in real life, it makes it you'll already understand a lot of the information in the book. And since the book has real world information, you'll learn that real world information at the same time.
And then on top of that, you were saying like this would loan well not just to the tabletop game,
Mhm.
but for LARPing as well.
Yeah, I want there's no standardization for LARPing either, which I thought was really weird, that there isn't just a easy access, like, standard rule set for LARPing for it to be easier to get into. Since there isn't one, I've decided that I wanted Oblivion Oddities to be able to be a LARP as well. And you could just transfer those rule sets over.
There is, but you're coming up against an industry shift that is really ugly, and I wish you all the luck. Are you familiar with Nordic LARP?
No.
Okay, very briefly, because we don't have infinite time and you got things to do and so on. Once upon a time, back in the time of dinosaurs, LARP was a come-as-you-are hobby. Jeans and a shirt? Fine. Come play LARP, whatever. And what defines LARP is a very open-ended thing, because sometimes it's historical recreation, sometimes it's running around throwing tennis wickets and shouting fireball, sometimes it's dressing very nice in evening wear and pretending to be vampires. That's all well and good. In my area, and to a lesser extent elsewhere, but I have to assume elsewhere as well, these groups got really niche and really elitist. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And started having problems getting members because they were less open to newbies walking up. You know, you're a newbie, you're dumb, you don't know what you're doing, you make some silly mistakes, and you get judged for it. Nobody enjoys that. Corporations, in particular, for an example, Paradox Interactive, who recently acquired the V5 license, really don't like that these, what they view as advertising fronts, are made up of elitist prats, okay? And that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But their solution was to corporatize LARP. So a Nordic-style LARP is basically you pay for a weekend. And we'll start with, it's what, $400 to travel anywhere by plane? Right?
No, more than that, but yeah.
Well, let's start with that as a number. So then there's a fee for getting to go, like a convention. Okay? And that's just to be present in the room as a normal. Okay? Let's say you want to be some kind of supernatural creature or an elf or something. Well, that's a little bit of an extra fee to pay for your fancy ears. Right? Well, let's say you want to be costumed up because they have on-site available costuming options. They can make you up and sit you down for 3 hours to make you look like not a person. Oh, well, you have to pay extra for that. Right?
So basically, they're nickel and diming it.
They're nickel and diming it in a DLC model in real life.
Mm.
That's
okay?
awful.
And the thing, you know, it is. And I'm told that I'm wrong. I'm told it's okay because if you're poor, just don't go. And it's like,
no.
But you're cutting out people at the bottom.
Yeah.
You're saying that people who aren't wealthy enough to get the best experience don't deserve to experience any of it. And it's like, well, you can just be a nobody. It's like, why would I want to be a nobody? I'm already a nobody. I want to go to a fancy game experience and be a somebody.
It's basically these guys are elitist prats. Let us show you how to be true elitist prats.
Right. Right. That the thing is that we made this situation. Okay, gamers at the bottom, being elitist fuckfaces, pardon my French, made this situation by creating the environment for this to happen. Right? But that doesn't mean it's okay. So when you say there's no standardization for LARP, like in a mechanical sense, like I'm with you, I get it. But the thing is it's not that the come as you are, everybody can play realm didn't exist. We killed it. Or it's being systematically strangled.
Yeah.
Well, that's where something new can come in and supplant that.
Right. And that's what we want. That's the good news.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
I think Oblivion Oddities could do that.
Yeah. And here's the one thing we talked about. I didn't write this one down, but I did want to get into this. Was the charging actions. We were talking about high level play.
Mm-hmm.
And this one held a lot of interest for me because when you mentioned how it worked, or it's sort of end goal, I was like, geez, holy crap, that's powerful. And then when you told me how you balanced it out, I was like, okay, so still not a nightmare for the GM to run.
Yeah. So you can actually hold an action and charge it if you're doing a spell or an attack or a key attack. And for every turn that you're charging it, it goes up in action cost. If you're level 1, you start out with 3 actions. So you would only be able to charge something for three rounds before you either have to release it or lose it all, and a backfire could happen. But once you get into the higher levels of play, like your level 100, which is the max for the game currently, and I don't think we'll push it past that, but you get 30 actions in a turn or in a round, and a round lasts only 10 seconds. So you would be able to technically do 30 attacks in one round on a higher level of play. But with the charge system, the way it goes is it goes up to, you have to use 9 actions in a turn at max to hold the charge. So if you wanted to continue holding the charge, if you have 30 actions, you can do that up to 3 times before you run out of actions and you have to release it, or you have to, or it's going to backfire. But the more you charge it, the more it increases in damage and power and distance and so on and so forth. So you can make a Kamehameha wave now.
And then there's also the karma point system, which looks to me like, when I read over this, and I'll kind of scroll back up to it, because this one looked like not so much an ability, but this one looked like reputation of the character itself. So
yeah,
here we go.
Right before I get into that,
go ahead.
The same rules that apply for charging apply for almost exact same rules apply for combining spells. So if you and another party member wanted to combine your spells in a turn, you actually can. There's rules set up for you to team up with your party members to combine spells and create new spells on the fly, or just have 9 people combine 9 level 1 fireballs into one, just to throw it at somebody.
That's basically a living, breathing weapon of mass destruction walking around, or a group of them. That's I don't know. I'm suddenly reminded of this one X-Men comic that I had where there was a character named Bishop, and if you're not familiar with Bishop's mutant power is that he absorbs mutant powers from others and then unleashes them via his guns.
Yeah,
like that's his way of controlling it. And in one particular not episode, but one particular issue, like the whole team is like laying hands on his shoulders or arms or wherever they could put their hands on him, and he's just like building up, and he unleashes this hellacious blast on whoever it was he was facing, and just blows them in the next week. And when you mentioned that, that's what I was thinking. I was like, it's almost like doing the same thing with Cyclops, but everybody lays hands on him, and then just after he's all like, okay, I can't hold it anymore, and he just rips his visor off and just boom.
Yeah, that's exactly what it would be like.
So real quick before we dig into karma, because we're obviously going to go a little bit over. There's no way we can't, boss. I pulled up a thing when I got back to my desk after grabbing a donut. Podcast donuts. So there's a new Nordic LARP event currently being produced by VanNess Studios, the vampire guys. Base ticket, just for the base ticket, is $100. Base ticket with a little bit extra is $150. Convention ticket with VIP, your gold ticket, is $500
for a single day. For
like a 3 nights 2-day weekend.
Okay.
But $25 for extra XP, so we're literally doing pay to win.
Oh wow.
$50 for quote the Vampires and Vino add-on. $50 for the Wolves and Whiskey add-on, and $50 for the By Night Studios V5 LARP ticket Saturday night. Okay? Do your own math on what that all adds up to if you wanted to get everything. Then add on your plane ticket. Okay? And here's the important point that I want to bring up for comparison. Okay? Because where I started to really get in trouble with people was they wanted to increase prices for membership in the LARP club, and I was like, this is wrong. It used to be $20 a year. You dropped $20, you could play for a year. You could play anywhere on the planet in the club you were in, if you were in the club I was in. Okay. Over time, they lost venues, they lost regions to play in, and it went from a weekly game, right, to a once-a-month game, 52 games a year, and they wanted to raise their prices to $25 a year, and I was like, why are you raising prices when you're not improving service? I'm not getting more, I'm actually getting less, and you want me to pay you more. And people are like, well, Nordic LARP's the future. I'm like, Nordic LARP is $1,000 investment base for nothing.
Yeah, pretty much. And here's the thing, when it comes right down to it, I've seen like what was it, Paradox? You said Paradox Games?
Yeah.
I don't want to hear another word about privilege from these people ever, because that's exactly who they're serving. So let's drop that pretense altogether, shall we? And Lucky Duck says that is why I don't LARP. That is insane. I did it when I did it. My local area, and I say local, that was 45 minutes away. I did it for 2 sessions, and it wasn't said directly to me, but the second session I did a little something, a little performance as my character, and let's just say it went well. And what ended up happening was that there were a couple people I could not help but overhear their conversation. They felt that I was upstaging them. I'm like, I'm not here to bring trouble. So I just quit doing it. It lasted 2 sessions. So after that, I was like, I'll bring my character back to the tabletop. It's fine. And that's what I did. It did cost gas money. And of course, me getting all dressed up for the event. But, when players are going through that kind of trouble, this is why I'm pointing this out, because from here, form your own group, do your own thing, make sure you're doing it. If you're going to do it well with your own system. Here it is, right here.
That's the thing. I participated for about 20 years, for comparison.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I stopped was a combination of getting run out of the club because I wanted people not to cheat. Right?
Yep.
Reasonable expectation that don't cheat. But the other thing is that my local troop games were also doing the exact same thing. They were elitist little jerks who didn't want to associate with me, which sounds really nasty. It's like, oh, well, Joe, they just didn't like you, and you expect people to like you. It's like, no. If you're talking about your game is losing membership, right? Because your game is too expensive, and I'm saying I'll keep showing up as long as, and I'll throw money in somebody's gas tank as long as you come get me, right? And you're traveling through my town game night, and you can't pick me up because you just don't care, and you can't take my ass home after game. Why would I even go? Why try? I can just stay home and tool around with the guys on the internet.
That's what this system. That's one of the many problems that I think this particular system in development will solve.
Yeah, I hope so.
That's what I'm about right now. And instead of like contributing to the drama, bring the solutions. That's exactly what we're doing right here, right now. We're bringing those solutions. So whether it's a modular system such as this one, or Ogres, or a company that says, okay, once the book is out of our hands and into yours, it's literally out of our hands. Do your table your way. Mm-hmm. Any company that says, no, you'll play this way or not at all, I'm like, I'll take not at all, thanks. I've got plenty of material here, and there's more on the way.
Isn't that somebody's motto too? Is your game your way?
Mm-hmm.
I want to say that's an older
2 of
one.
them.
Way back in the
3
'90s, that
now.
was an advertising campaign.
Mm-hmm. And that now there's at least 3 or 4 companies I can name personally. This is going to be one of them. It's going to be, play your way, your rules, and once it's out of our hands, it's out of our hands. Yeah, it's your game, your way, your table, your rules, and that's the solution I think is best. And let's see what we got here. I haven't LARPed since the mid to late 80s and early 90s, and it was us in a field having fun dressing up, having sword fights with foam or wooden swords. It was fun. Yeah, that's the point.
Hey, Lucky Duck, I still have my boffers, hand-me-downs from my folks. PVC pipe, foam, rubber, duct tape. All of my friends are afraid to play with them. They're like, "We'll get hurt." I'm like, "Come on, bruises are part of the experience."
Well, let me tell you, there was a guy that left some stuff at my last place, and some of them were those pool noodle foam
therapeutic bats.
Yeah, and me and a guy went to dueling. I didn't expect him to go full speed, and he cracked me. I'm not kidding. Right here on this knuckle. These 3 look like one big knuckle for about maybe a couple weeks.
Were you wearing work gloves? Because you're supposed to wear work gloves.
No, well, we just took the swords and went out in my backyard. It was dumb, and so I paid for that dumbass decision. That's fact. But here we're gonna get to the karma reputation score bonuses. Because
wait a minute. So what you're saying is you went out, you did something stupid, and you got some instant karma.
Instant, yeah. So this is the thing. Your reputation is bound to grow through your actions and choices. So your reputation status title determines the number of favor bonuses you get in social encounters. Your karma determines if your reputation score is positive or negative. So not everything is going to go your way, but I mean, you could be a feared warlord here. And you're and this is a nice balance, because if you're, and this I can give personal experience here, where I used to work in a prison, we've done that show, and in there, if you did not have respect, those guys would walk all over you. And if you were one of the inmates there, if you didn't have some kind of respect, the rest of them will walk all over you as well. So this is one of those things where you're not, you don't go overboard. You do what you have to do to establish that reputation. But once established, it could go either in your favor or not. So for evildoers, your alignment will determine how big your bonuses get. And that's, so if 2 people are evil, malicious criminals who are well known, they'll both have penalties to their favor bonuses, but towards each other and those in the underworld, those penalties are actually bonuses.
I mean, that was something that I talked Miguel into, if you recall, was the idea that among other wretches, you shouldn't have negatives for being a wretch.
Yeah.
That only among the normals would your wanted level be a problem.
Yeah, that wanted level, which when I talked to him about that, he was like, "Yeah, we took it from GTA."
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, it makes sense. But yours is a bit different. Yours runs a little bit more detailed, and just aside from what I just covered, go ahead and tell us all about it.
Go up to page 9, the top of page 9.
Page 9. Here we go. Karma point system right there.
Actually, go up one more page.
One more? Okay.
Quick. Yep.
There we go.
There we go. So before I can get into fully talking about the karma points and choices, your karma will also determine the type of experience you have in the afterlife. There are 3 levels. There's the material plane, which is everything physical. There is an in-between, which is purgatory, and then there's the spirit world, and they're all layered on top of each other. The spirit world cannot interact with the material plane. The material plane cannot interact with the spirit world. But if you're in purgatory, you can interact with either way. purgatory is essentially where spirits and ghosts and poltergeists are.
And
And
the purgatory realm itself would have both, positive and negative forces dwelling with it, and I take it.
yeah, if your commerce score, reputation score is in the negative, you're going to have a really bad time, and things that are evil are going to seek you out to probably try and eat you. But if you're in the positive, you're going to have a better time. Let's see. You have positive choices, negative choices, and neutral choices. We already understand those. The other choices are choices that are nearly impossible to make, like saving
There's
one.
no good way to do it.
Yeah, the trolley problem, essentially, the psychology trolley problem. Then you have unconscious choices and conscious choices. If remember that situation I was telling you about, making a kid happy and feel joy because they're sad?
Yeah.
If you consciously end up succeeding on that, you're gonna get 1 point of positive in your favor. If you ended up accidentally making them sad, it'd become an unconscious negative choice. If you scroll down a little bit, there's a chart that tells you what the points are. Unfortunately, for right now, people will have to keep track of this until I can get a virtual tabletop system set up that will track it for them. But these will determine whether or not you're going to have a good or bad experience in the afterlife, the spirit world.
Okay. So this goes back to the character death, which I think is up here somewhere. No, it's going to be
farther down.
Further down.
Yeah, post living beings.
Post living beings, yeah. That's what I was looking for, was post. We now pronounce you living impaired, as they said in Animaniacs. Here we go. So for the dead and undead, negative ability scores are bonuses instead of weaknesses. Their negatives can affect your bonuses. And a skeleton has a negative constitution score of negative 30 with a negative 10 ability modifier. And because of this, all damage rolls against a skeleton have a negative 10 added to them after the end of all calculations. So you cover skeletons, liches as examples here.
Yeah. In the rough draft, I have more things set up for post living beings, and everybody can actually find the rough draft on my Patreon. If you join for the $1 tier, you can get it. And I'm releasing the revision that we're going over currently of 1.0015 in just a couple days on there as well. So people would be able to get that from there as well.
My skeleton was so beefy, he ripped his way out of my body.
But that's if you're on the material realm. Oh, your karma reputation score bonus is what's going to replace your physical attributes when you're dead, like when you're in purgatory and in the spirit world.
Okay.
Because you won't have a physical body anymore.
Right.
And I thought it would be weird to just keep those ability scores. And since I already have something that determines how well you're going to do in the afterlife, I figured might as well use that as well.
Right on. Okay. So let's see. And this is an interesting one right here. So you and your party of 6 going up against a lich. The lich uses a spell that drains the life force of everyone in the party within its area of effect. Holy crap. The lich has a negative 30 added to their base casting roll. So spells that don't have attack rolls have casting rolls. The casting roll determines if you successfully cast the spell during combat. So this is not fancy in magic here. And it's a hit or miss. If you have a critical failure, you lose the spell you're casting. If you have to prepare it, then you lose your preparation. If you have spell slots or points, you lose your spell slot or points used to cast a spell on a critical failure. Oof.
Mm-hmm.
I'd hate to have a bad luck roll or the GM to have a really good luck roll that day. That would be very, very bad.
Mhm.
So even with the luck abilities, the luck rolls that you mentioned earlier, this entire system, just based on those two things, this does have that old school feel where it favors intelligence over just going head on at the enemy here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you can think your situations through beforehand, you'll probably end up succeeding in whatever you want to do.
And then I think we had one more thing to discuss here.
Oh my god, have we actually been on target today?
Oh,
Did we actually cover most of the things?
we covered all but one, and
Oh my god!
I think this is I saved this for last. I'll tell you why I saved it for last. I think this is going to be one of the most interesting parts of it, because when we talked about it being an entertainment company, it's not just a tabletop role playing game. This one is also going to have tie-ins. So, movies, TV shows, books,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got a fantasy book series. You're saying, I think you told me like something like almost 20
plus,
books.
Yeah,
Yeah.
18 plus books currently planned out.
And
they all take place before the main timeline that you play in game. It's all the events that lead up to changing the world to set it up to be the way it is when you play in game. It follows one of the first characters I created, which was a ranger, through his journey through his epic. His epic and odyssey, where it ends will pick up in the game 3,000 years later. So there's new gods, there's new rules and stuff going on that are a little bit different from what's in the book, but still there. Then we have hints to stuff that's going to be in the game. And once we get the virtual tabletop set up, you'll be able to play essentially like an MMO and go out into the world and try and find and discover stuff that's in the content that's made outside of the books, outside of the core role play books. And you'll be able to find stuff in game that way too.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I'll tell you what, we've covered just about every point that it seemed you wanted to cover. Is there anything else you wanted to share before we close out of here? And before you do, I just wanted to say this has been a real pleasure. It's been an honor seeing this in development, seeing this what I think will have a very positive impact on the RPG and entertainment sphere as a whole. It's a very ambitious project, and I want to let you know, any developments happen, don't keep it to yourself. Send up that flag. We'll go ahead and we'll pull you back on. You're welcome back at any point in time. But go ahead, man. Throw anything else you want to in there. And I know Patreon, GoFundMe links are in the description down below, so they're not hard to find. Go ahead and check those out. And go ahead.
Go down to page 22, and at the bottom of it, it should be. Oh, nope, 23. 24? Where is it? We're looking for ability score combination systems. It's right under stat drain.
Okay, let's see. Ability score.
Even the people who wrote it have difficulty finding things in role-playing books. It's not just you.
It's near the end. It's near the end. Oh, wait, no, you were just at it. Go up.
Action economy or...
Up. There it is. That's what I wanted to go over right there. The ability score combination systems.
Okay.
I have always hated the fact that there was no rule set to just make or to just have tougher characters. Like, how do you determine what is actually natural armor? How do you determine how big your dice are actually going to be? If you make a very beefy character, shouldn't your dice pool go up and the dice you roll every time for your health go up? Shouldn't there be ways to protect your mind and mindscapes? So I decided that I was going to combine different abilities to do such a thing. And if you combine your strength and constitution, you'll get natural armor. And if you scroll down just a little bit, you'll see the examples I set up for the ability for natural armor particularly. If you have a +1 in strength and a +1 in constitution, you'll have +1 natural armor. If you have +2 in strength and +1 in constitution, it's always going to be the lower number. So now you have ways to just build your character in min-maxing ways that we haven't been able to before. So if you want to make the guy that's literally bulletproof, you can now.
Yeah, and then you have the saving throw system here, which you're combining attributes. So your strength, character level, luck, bonuses. Your saving throw will also beef up as your character levels up.
Yeah. Yep. I wanted to make sure that no matter what level you're at, it's always going to feel about the same, and that you're getting stronger. The difficulty should always be about the same, but you should always feel like you're getting stronger.
Yeah. So this is where 5th edition people are the 5th edition GMs in particular are feeling the burn. Is past 6th level, the player characters become just way more powerful than anything the GM could throw at them, and it's becoming a point of contention where they don't feel like they could challenge their players. And in this case, as the challenge rises, you rise to that challenge. I think that's part of that old school feel again.
I actually have a solution for this, which is not in this play packet. It's in the pre-alpha. But with my experience system, the way it's set up is you don't gain any experience from defeating or killing anybody that's a few levels lower than you, and you can't defeat somebody who's a few levels higher than you. So it's always going to be balanced. You're either going to have somebody 1 level higher or 1 level lower.
See, this is one of those environments where Raven and I disagree. They exist, guys. They really do. Because I think that the problem in 5e, for comparison, is not that you can't challenge your players. It's that much of the, culture around gaming has encouraged people to stop challenging them, or not use the tools available to challenge them. I recall a commentary I saw recently where somebody said that using players' tricks against them was unfair, right? Like, we've never heard of what's good for the goose is good for the gander. I'm sorry, but if your players can gang up and use advantage, so can the monsters. They totally can. They don't have to play fair. They don't have to play nice. They're allowed to use tactics. They're allowed to use dirty tricks. In fact, it should be expected. I know there's a lot of argument about action economy and various characters being super powerful, but the fact of the matter is like, I can find ways to counter and reduce those powers. And I do agree with you, Sergio. Like, at a certain point, killing goblins is beneath you. You really shouldn't be doing it, because you're just vacuuming people at that point, right? On the other hand, it should not be, well, you shouldn't have thrown a lich at us. It's like, dude, you walked into a room, a lich stood up and said hello. Leave the room. Leave now. Holy crap.
Yeah. And this is the action economy phase right here. So this shows you exactly how much or how many actions you would have to take in order to achieve, what it is you need to do.
And to put a cap on this, I just want to point out the part that I find ironic, okay, is like, Skyrim's been re-released, what, 12 times? Like 14
Something like
million
that, yeah.
times? Yeah. Nobody complains in a video game if you meet a boss that's well outside your level cap and it
And
kicks
they
your
just wreck
ass.
you. Yeah.
Yeah. Unless you're playing Dark Souls, apparently. Apparently Dark Souls has to be for everybody now. But, if you're level 1 nobody with nothing and you encounter the endgame boss and it stomps you, everybody goes, yeah, you got stomped. It's only bad if they think they can win. And it's like, why did you think you could win when you were facing something that awful? And it's
Mhm.
specifically tabletop games that somehow break the rules by having bad guys be tough. I don't know why.
Now that you're pulling up the action system, I wanted to point out that there's an action on here that people won't be familiar with, and that's forging. This goes for particularly the class that I've called Crafter, and you can think of them like Torbjorn from Overwatch or a Green Lantern.
Mhm.
They're able to forge on the spot, and they're able to build things that can be defensive or offensive on the spot. And it's a kind of magic, but it uses Constitution. They literally put their blood, sweat, and tears into whatever they're doing to create something that will last short term and hold itself together during a combat session.
Oh, so this isn't something that they have to prepare first. This is something that they could do right in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So
But it's not forgery, guys. That's a different thing.
That you would have to prepare. You can't just forge a signature to a patent of nobility right there in the moment. They're going to know.
I mean, some people have tried.
What are you doing? Well, I've got a signature here. I've got the signature from the noble lord. Dude, we just watched you sign that.
Oh no, I actually had that happen in a game. I'm not kidding. Some guys used hats of disguise to change their shape into the local police in front of the local police, and then got really mad at me when they got arrested. They were like, "But why? How did they know?" It's like they were standing right there. They watched you do it. Well, I would have gone into an alley or something. It's like, you didn't say you did, so you didn't. You literally did this in front of the cops.
And now
they're not stupid. They're just cops.
That's very true. It's like, wait, it's sort of like that scene in Monty Python. Your arm's off. No, it isn't. What's that? It's just a flesh wound.
This is but a scratch.
What are you gonna do? Bleed on me?
Get over here! I'll bite your nipples off.
There's a new class called Crafter, and what they do is they normally make things that are stronger than a single spell, which is why they take 3 actions. A spell on the same level as a forging item that's on the same level, the forging item is more than likely going to be, on average, more powerful. So I thought that putting it as 3 actions, which would be 1 forging item at level 1 around, would be the best way to balance that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, anything final before we close out here?
I want everybody to go check out my Patreon, and I'm working on a video for my Patreon as well, and trying to get some stuff up for that, because the video I had for it was like 6 years old or something. I just took it down last night because I think it's like drawing people away, pushing people away. But just check out my Patreon, check out the GoFundMe, and if you like it, donate $1. That's really all I'm asking.
And links are in the description down below. This is gonna be on 4 platforms, including YouTube. So YouTube it's over and done for YouTube, but it'll be up on Cloud Hub, Rumble, Odyssey, and there was 5, because I'm actually gonna put this on my Substack too. But Cloud Hub. Yeah, I don't have words today. I just don't.
I'm not saying you have to, but I would be deeply, deeply amused if you made a parody ad that was one of those for pennies a day. You could support a game dev ads.
So
I'm gonna have
YouTube,
to now.
Cloud Hub, and Rumble, and Substack. It's going to be on all of those. The links will be in the description down below, guys. Check it out. Add him over on Twitter. Are you on any other platforms or just Twitter?
I have Facebook, Twitter, and then I have an Instagram as well.
Okay, cool.
You'll be able to find all of them on the Patreon.
Yeah, and shoot me those links too. I'll include those in the description, so I'll go ahead and edit that before I start uploading anywhere else. Sergio, thank you again for coming onto the show. It was an honor and a privilege to check out this work. It was great checking it out, and thank everyone for showing up. Thank you for your likes, your shares, your subscribes, all of that. I just want to close out by saying I love you all. Take care of yourselves and each other.
You letting me come on here like this. This has been extremely exciting for me, and like it's made my week.
Glad we could. Love you all. Take care of yourselves and each other. Always play what lights you up, and as always, play on.